When British archaeologist Howard Carter opened a sarcophagus in the Valley of the Kings for the first time, this boy king has captivated our attention for years. Not only the treasures found in the tomb, but also who this boy king was and why he died so young. Since the discovery, many archaeologists, academics, and amateur Egyptologists have come up with theories about what ultimately killed him. In each case, however, the evidence was interesting but never compelling enough. Was he murdered? Did he succumb to an innate health condition? Or was he a victim of inbreeding of the royal family? Today in Binge History, we will bring you the mysterious causes of death of Tutankhamun you will definitely want to know. Speaking of kings, almighty, invincible, dominant, and fabulously rich would be the words coming to our head. However, this seems not the case for the boy king. Based on the furnishings of the tomb, archaeologists speculate King Tut seemed to have been treated unfairly. He was only 18 years old when he died, which was too young for a pharaoh who had the access to the best nutrition and medical care. His political situation might have also put him in danger. His father, Akhenaten, was a controversial king. He decreed that Egypt should worship a single god, Aten, instead of many. He also moved its capital from Thebes to Amarna. These policies infuriated many and created political opponents. From this point of view, Tutankhamun could have easily gotten into trouble. Judging from the situation in the tomb, his death was sudden and the tomb was so narrow and small that obviously he was buried in a hurry. All the hints make one can't help but think he might have been murdered, and possibly by someone who wanted the power to the throne. The tomb of Tutankhamun was somewhat unusual. Its modest-looking interior made one think it was not prepared for a pharaoh. The murals of the tomb are splashed with many paints, making the decoration look very sloppy. Other eye-catching funerary antiques were not all Tutankhamun's daily necessities. In fact, many antiques had been originally engraved with other people's names, which were then wiped off and replaced by Tutankhamun's. Moreover, the work of making his mummy was also sloppy. Obviously, the process was not carefully taken care of. Usually, a pharaoh's body would be evenly soaked with preservatives. However, buckets of preservatives were carelessly poured onto King Tut's body. Was this part of the burial ceremony at the time? Or was it a clumsy act of trying to conceal the truth of some heinous murder? In 1968, after an X-ray examination, researchers at the University of Liverpool in the UK found a displaced bone in the brain cavity of King Tut's body. There was also a shadow-like spot that resembled a blood bump on the back of his head. All signs showed that Tutankhamun had been fatally hit. This prompted a sensational theory that the boy king had been hit on his head to death. Perhaps he was assassinated by his political opponents. Another potential cause of death could be a special illness, making King Tut more vulnerable to falling. Scientists set up a mobile, non-invasive CT scanner in Luxor to perform a full-body scan on the king's remains. This exam obtained about 1,900 digital cross-sectional images. Out of surprise, the scan disproved the popular theory that he was murdered by a blow to his head. According to the result, the vertebrae on Tutankhamun's neck obviously suffered from congenital torticollis syndrome. This type of illness is common among people with inbreeding. Patients with this illness have to rotate their entire body to turn their heads. This defect makes people more susceptible to injury when they fall or get pushed by other people. Another significant discovery indicated a fractured leg. It suggests Tutankhamun broke his leg just before he died. Therefore, his death might have resulted from an infection or other complications. In 2014, BBC television released a documentary about King Tut's cause of death. It postulated he died in a chariot crash that broke his legs, pelvis, and other body parts, and this accident resulted in an infection and perhaps death by blood poisoning. Proponents of this theory say Tut was depicted riding on chariots, which showed he suffered from a deformed left foot. This depiction makes it possible that he fell and broke his leg. If this is true, it would be congruent with the X-ray and CT scan results. However, there is no strong evidence found to validate the theory. Christopher Naunton, an Egyptologist and former head of the Egypt Exploration Society, still has doubts about the chariot crash theory. He said the skeletal damage could have been caused by the incorrect handling of the mummy after the discovery of the tomb by Howard Carter. A was an advisor under Tutankhamun's father's reign. After Akhenaten's death and Tutankhamun ascended the throne, A assisted Tutankhamun to run the country and was deeply trusted by Tutankhamun. A's motive for murder might be the desire to the throne. In fact, he did become the next pharaoh following Tutankhamun's death. The murals in Tutankhamun's tomb show A presided over the funeral of Tutankhamun. At that time, only the new pharaoh could preside over the funeral of the past pharaoh. Another piece of evidence was a document written in cuneiform. It claimed Hittite's king, the king of an ancient kingdom located in today's Turkey, received a letter from a widow of an Egyptian pharaoh. The letter asked the king to send one of his princes to marry her, otherwise she would be forced to marry his servant. Since Hittite's kingdom was one of the traditional enemies of Egypt and had been battling it out for a long time, the king was really surprised to see the letter. Archaeologists believe the widow in the records was most likely to be Tutankhamun's wife, Ankhesenamun. In the eyes of Ankhesenamun, A was just a servant. As a matter of fact, there are Hittite records describing a Hittite prince had actually traveled to Egypt, but there are no Egyptian records to support it. Unfortunately, the Hittite prince was murdered on the borders of Egypt before he entered the country. Assassinating a prince who was going to become the pharaoh of Egypt was a bold and outrageous action. It had to be an official government-sponsored move. If so, who authorized it? Was it A? Archaeologists also found a pair of rings engraved with the names of Ankhesenamun and A, proving that the two people were indeed married. A could use the marriage as a political act to legalize and legitimize his pharaoh status. General Horemheb was also the former King Akhenaten's closest advisors. Under Tutankhamun, he was appointed commander-in-chief of the army and deputy of the king. He was also Tutankhamun's military coach who taught him how to hunt and drive chariots. These activities may provide ample opportunities for plotting an accident. If Tutankhamun really died on the way out, in order to prevent the body from decay before being transported back, it might explain why a lot of preservatives were poured onto the body. As for the murder of Tutankhamun, it is very likely he wanted to usurp power and ascend to the throne, which was not difficult for him as he controlled the military power. In fact, he did become the pharaoh after the demise of Tutankhamun and Tut's successor A. During his reign, he removed Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and A from the royal list of pharaohs. He also demolished monuments of Akhenaten, reused the rubble in his own building projects, and usurped monuments of Tutankhamun and A. All these actions seem so sketchy and makes people believe he might have really killed Tutankhamun for power. Nefertiti was one of the most famous beauties in the Egyptian history. Her name literally means the beautiful woman has come. She came from a prominent family and was the daughter of a famous noble, possibly A, as archaeologists speculate. Yes, I know. A's daughter is Nefertiti, who gave birth to Ankhesenamun, and so basically A married his own granddaughter. Imagining you marrying your own granddaughter or you marrying your own grandfather, I don't even want to think about it. It might seem crazy and disgusting to us today, but inbreeding was so common in ancient Egyptian royal family. Back to Nefertiti. She was married to the 18th dynasty pharaoh Akhenaten. Nefertiti was clever and wise, proficient in all kinds of knowledge such as astronomy and geography. She became a great assistant to her husband to rule ancient Egypt. The Egyptians respected her so much that they gave her titles like Hereditary Princess, Lady of the Two Lands, and Lady of All Women. Nefertiti gave birth to 6 daughters. After the death of her husband, she assisted the 9-year-old new king Tutankhamun to succeed to the throne and married her 3 daughters to him. Because he was too young, Nefertiti was technically the one in charge of the country for many years. Therefore, she was likely to murder his son-in-law as she got so used to having the power. What do you think the real cause of Tutankhamun's death? And do you think he was murdered, or did he die to his personal health conditions? Leave your comment below to let us know. In the next video, we will talk about the curse of Tutankhamun. Lots of people die after opening of the tomb. In fact, almost everyone who was present at the opening died of baffling reasons. Even doctors failed to explain why. Is the curse of the King Tut's tomb real? If not, Why did so many people involved in the excavation die shortly after the discovery? If you don't want to miss the next video, don't forget to click the subscribe button. As usual, thank you for watching Binge History. We will see you next time. Peace.